Cops destroy passport of black woman, shocking discovery revealed later at 3 a.m. The sirens wailed through the moonlit streets, drowning out the whispers of terrified witnesses. In the dead of night, when shadows stretch and the world stands still, chaos erupted. A black woman, clutching her passport, helplessly watched as officers tore it apart as if it were a mere piece of paper. Pieces fluttered to the ground, the whirring of the wind carrying them like fallen leaves. Her eyes widened, heart racing. A mixture of disbelief and fear settled in her chest like a heavy stone. What had she done to deserve this? The surrounding crowd murmured, an uneasy assembly of onlookers. Faces twisted in shock. Were they witnessing an injustice? Anger simmered beneath the surface. The air hummed with tension. People leaned closer, straining to hear the exchange erupting between the woman and the officers, their voices rising like a storm brewing on the horizon. But amid the chaos, a strange glint caught her eye. Among the shredded passport lay a faded photo, one that felt out of place. It was an image of a younger version of herself, smiling, but what really stood out were the sporadic symbols scrawled across its surface, seeming to pulse under the streetlight's glow. Symbols she didn't recognize. An icy dread crept up her spine. What did this mean? Just then the officer paused, squinting at the torn pieces. His brow furrowed. Something shifted in the air, a clue teetering on the brink of revelation. A trembling finger reached out to grab at the mysterious photo, but there was hardly time. Before she could act, the officer snapped it up, and she felt a tightness in her throat. "Where did you get this?" he barked, the question hanging heavy, charged with urgency. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." The words echoed, mingling with the thrumming adrenaline in her veins. The crowd shifted restlessly, some whispering, others pulling out phones to capture the scene. What was about to happen next? Would this turn ugly? She could feel the collective breath held, waiting for the next dramatic moment to unfold. In that breathtaking pause, the world seemed to hang in slow motion. The night deepened, darkness framing everything, and she wondered, had they just landed upon something bigger than all of them? Something that tore at the seams of her very existence? As questions crashed around her like waves, reality twisted. She had to uncover the truth hidden in those fragments. But could she do it before the night swallowed everything whole? The officer's eyes darkened as he studied the photo, shadows flickering across his face. The crowd, feeling the weight of the moment, exchanged wary glances. Would he expose the young woman's secret, whatever it was? In that tense silence, she could hear her heartbeat drumming in her ears, drowning out the distant echoes of shouting in police radios. "Who are you?" the officer demanded, his voice low and dangerous, peeling back layers of the night's uncertainties like an onion, leaving her exposed. The woman swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his gaze on her, a pressure that threatened to crush her. She clenched her fists, reminding herself she was more than just this raw panic, more than a victim of circumstance. I just found it," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know enough," he snapped, cutting her off like a knife. "Where did you get it?" The aggression in his posture made her instinctively want to recoil, but there was nowhere to go. The crowd was a wall, both a shield and a prison. Witnessing this slow unraveling of her life, she struggled to formulate her next words. A woman stepped forward from the disheveled audience, her expression filled with a sudden ferocity. "You have no right. This is harassment." This surprising defense drew more murmurs, emboldening other onlookers to join in. Voices rose, anger igniting as they rallied behind her. Yet the officer, undeterred, took a step forward, looming over the young woman like a storm cloud ready to burst. "Tell me who you really are, or I will make your life hell." Fear gripped her. The truth felt slippery, an elusive thing that danced just out of reach. I'm nobody," she shouted. The desperation poured out, but it only seemed to tighten the ropes of tension around her. The officer's gaze flickered between her and the now crumpled passport shards scattered like remnants of a shattered life. Was that photo the key to something more? The thought sent shivers through her spine. The symbols circled in her mind like vultures, waiting for the right moment to dive in. Then, like a sudden light breaking through the clouds, a familiar face emerged from the back of the crowd, her older brother. Dread washed over her as she remembered the heated arguments about family secrets they had shared. He never wanted anything to do with his past. Now here he was standing before the chaos, eyes wide. "Leah!" he shouted, pushing through the horde. "Step back." The officer turned, momentarily distracted, and in that split second, she grabbed at the remnants of her passport on the ground. She felt their rough edges, the weight of dozens of untold stories coiling around her fingers. As he turned back, rage painted his expression. "You think you can just wait?" Her brother interrupted sharply, stepping between her and the officer. "You don't know what you're dealing with." He hurled the words like grenades, shattering the charged air. The murmuring crowd fell silent, all eyes glued to this unexpected confrontation. What could her brother possibly know that could change everything? They were outmatched by an officer who bore the power of the law, but maybe, just maybe, they had something more potent. The truth. The world around them held its breath. What secrets would spill into the darkness, casting new light on the chaos of a fractured night? She felt alive with possibility, hope threaded through desperation. But as the silence stretched, a new urgency emerged. Would her brother's revelation bridge the gap? Or would it ignite an even greater fire? With a steadying breath, she held onto the tattered pieces of her identity in that turbulent moment, feeling the path ahead shrouded in uncertainty. The tension crackled in the air, thick enough to slice through. Leah felt her heart race with a ferocity that mirrored the chaos surrounding her. The officer's eyes, dark and steely, flickered from her brother to her, searching for weakness. "Is this your idea of a joke?" The officer spat, his voice rising again, the crowd shifting uneasily as some took a step back, clearly disturbed by the rising drama. Pushed by instinct, Leah stepped forward, drawn to her brother like a moth to a flame. "No, listen!" her brother shouted, his urgency cutting through the confusion like a siren in the night. "You don't understand what's at stake here." There was a collective intake of breath from the crowd. They leaned in, curious, tense. Leah caught glimpses of familiar faces, neighbors and friends who all seemed to hold echoes of her family's past, fragments of history that thrummed like ghosts. "Your sister," her brother continued, voice steady yet imploring. "She's got nothing to do with all this. You're making a mistake." He gestured harshly at the crumpled passport, its metaphorical weight now heavier than ever. The officer's resolve was crumbling. "What are you trying to protect her from? Is she involved?" His voice dripped with incredulity. "What do you know?" "Everything," her brother said firmly, each syllable cutting through the night. The crowd leaned closer, the whispers and disbelief muting their surroundings. Leah's chest tightened with apprehension as her brother's next words played both their fates, like a coin tossed into dark waters. "There are things that we've carried, things that put us all at risk." His gaze fell on Leah, fierce and gentle at once. "Things I hoped to shield you from. But now you have to know." He turned back to the officer, standing defiantly. "You want answers? Fine. Just let us speak." Leah felt the world tilt. The fear that had accumulated into a thick weight in her throat began to crack, replaced by a flicker of hope. But it was a spark tangled with dread. What truths lay locked away, hidden beneath layers of silence that she never thought she'd have to unearth? The officer scowled but could hardly muster the intimidation he had moments before. "Speak," he barked, but the authority in his voice waned. The crowd waited in suspense as they shared the unspoken tension, an electrifying pulse connecting them all, illusion or truth. It was all on the brink. With shaky hands, Leah grasped the pieces of her passport, feeling its history coursing through her fingers. "I don't know everything," she started, each word carefully chosen, fragile under the weight of her unsteady voice. "But I do know I have a right to my story." "What story?" the officer pressed, unnerved yet unwilling to relent. With every question her pulse quickened. Would she find out who had shattered her past, and if the fragments could come together again? Would her brother's revelation pull her back from the edge or thrust her into deeper waters? As the night air burned with anticipation, a loud hush fell over the assembly. Leah took her breath, binding the fragments of her courage tightly around her heart. Her voice trembled, yet she knew she had to speak. had to reveal what had been buried for too long. Before she could utter another word, a sound pierced the evening, a shrill scream from the back of the crowd, echoing through the air, disrupting everything in its wake. "Ocean's coming!" a voice cried out as more people hurried to the edge of the gathering, pointing wildly at something unseen. With time stretching and hearts racing, they turned, all eyes shifting as one. What new threat lay on the horizon? Would they have the strength to face not just the past, but whatever darkness awaited? The crowd erupted into chaos. People scrambled, a wave of panic washing over them as they turned to see what lay ahead. Lia's heart thudded with each frantic movement, her mind racing to catch up. The officer, momentarily distracted by the shouts, stepped back, eyeing the seething mass of humanity that had transformed into a living organism. Terrified, alert, and ready to flee, Lia strained to see through the throng, her brother's presence anchoring her somehow. "What is happening?" she gasped, the unyielding grip of anxiety tightening around her throat. "No idea," he replied, scanning the crowd with wide eyes. But then his expression shifted to something more grave. "Whatever it is, it's not good." The officer, realizing he was losing control, holstered his weapon and shouted, "Everyone, calm down. Stay where you are." His voice, usually commanding, cracked under pressure as he waved his arms, trying to establish order. But the crowd only surged with more intensity, a pack driven by instinct. Lia tore her gaze away from the officer. Ahead, she caught sight of a distant wave, spiraled and glimmering under the pale moonlight. But that was no ordinary wave. It was enormous, rising like a monstrous wall, seeming to swell in time with the rapid beats of her heart. "Lia," her brother urged, pulling her closer. "Get back. We need to find shelter." "Shelter?" she echoed, barely able to think. In the pit of her stomach, dread swirled, mixing with the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She needed to know to understand. Suddenly, a woman near the front shrieked as the ocean broke, a massive swell spilling over, crashing against the shore with an angry roar. The fishy breeze surged toward them, carrying the scent of salt and danger. Water sprayed high into the air, soaking those who stood too close. "Run!" someone shouted, and it triggered a stampede. Bodies collided, desperate and frantic, a cacophony of screams and shouts ringing in the night. Lia lost her brother in the throng. "Jason!" she cried, but her voice was swallowed by the clamor. As she stumbled back, struggling to breathe, she felt a hand grasp her wrist, pulling her away from the tumult. "Come on." It was a stranger, his face etched with urgency. "We need to get to higher ground." Without hesitating, she let him lead her, heart racing for more than one reason. They darted through the chaos, weaving closely together until they reached the edge of the crowd, gasping for fresh air as they stood before a half-crumbled archway of an old building. It felt like a sanctuary against the pandemonium outside. But dread pooled in her stomach as she turned back to the scene. Terror clutched her heart. The ocean surged again, breaking toward the shore. The very ground beneath her feet shuddered as another wave smashed against the rocks with a deafening clap, followed by a deep rumble that vibrated through the air, menacing and unrelenting. In that disorienting moment, uncertainty paralyzed her. With her brother gone and the chaos still unfolding, where would she find safety? "What is happening?" she asked the stranger, voice trembling. Before he could respond, the officer burst into the aging building, face pale and eyes wild. "We need to evacuate. It's only going to get worse." Each word landed like a stone at her feet, sending chills spiraling up her spine. "Lia!" a voice shouted from behind her. Her heart soared before plummeting into despair as she turned. It was Jason, drenched, breathless but alive. "Let us get out of here," he panted, urgency cracking through his voice. Before they could make a move, the ground trembled once more, a violent rumble echoing underfoot. The pillars creaked ominously, threatening to give way. "Now!" she screamed, her heart pounding. They took off together, but the air was thick with fear, suffocating and potent. As they raced toward the only escape, the shadows around them darkened, the air heavy with foreboding. Little did they know, amidst the chaos, something far more sinister waited to be uncovered. What lay beneath the waves and within the shadows? They had fled one danger, but how many more awaited them in the night? The moment Lia and Jason burst through the crumbling archway, the destruction outside felt like an angry beast unleashed. Dark clouds rolled in, blotting out the moon, swallowing the night. Lightning flickered, illuminating the chaos in blinding flashes, each one etching frantic faces into her mind. "Where do we go?" Jason shouted, scanning the disarray. Waves crashed violently against the shore, and another rumble echoed beneath them, a warning. She felt it in her bones, too strong to ignore. Up! Her instinct screamed. The higher ground, the old building's staircase spiral, was the only option left. Without another word, they dashed inside, arms brushing against the damp walls. The stranger had already vanished into the fray, leaving her with just her brother. A rush of disappointment filled her, but there was no time to dwell. "Leah, wait!" Jason called, nearly tripping on the worn steps. "We need to be careful." "I know," she shot back, but the urgency pulsed in her veins, igniting her fear. She needed to act, to save herself, to protect him. As they climbed, the building shook around them, dust raining down like confetti. They reached the top floor and pushed through an old door, slamming it shut behind them. The room was sparse, just a few broken chairs and a thick layer of dust. A single window offered a ghastly view of the surging ocean. Leah stepped forward, breath hitching. "What is happening down there?" she whispered, petrified of the answer. Jason joined her, eyes wide. "It's like we're in the eye of a storm." His voice trailed off as the ground quaked again. She glanced toward the door, then back to him. A thought loomed heavy in her mind. What if they were trapped? With a racing heart, she turned to the window. The waves thrashed, illuminating the shoreline, revealing silhouettes struggling against the current. The screaming of the crowd was muffled here, but she could still feel their panic lacing the very air. Are they okay?" she stammered, fear gnawing at her gut. "We can't just sit here," Jason said, too serious. His brow furrowed, determination etching its way over his young features. "We need to find a way down, find out what is happening. Maybe we can help." "I don't know, Jay," she murmured, shaking her head. But deep down, a flicker of resolve ignited within her. "Okay, let us go." They turned to the door, but just as they reached for the handle, a thunderous crash echoed from below, shaking the building violently. A chill cascaded down Leah's spine as she exchanged a fearful glance with Jason. "What was that?" he whispered, dread creeping into his voice. Before she could answer, another flash of lightning flooded the room, illuminating a massive shadow in the distance, moving against the waves. It broke the water's surface in a furious rush, crashing into view as it loomed larger with every flicker. Her breath hitched. As the shadow materialized, the realization pierced through her. This was no ordinary wave. It was something alive, something monstrous, thrumming with power and fury. "Oh my God," Jason gasped, eyes wide with terror. "What is that?" "I don't know," she gasped back, heart now hammering in her chest. "They couldn't stay here. Not with that thing out there." As if sensing their fear, the creature twisted and plunged itself back into the depths, its wake sending another surge crashing against the shore. "What if it comes for us?" Jason's voice trembled, but determination painted his features with the strength of a soldier. "We have to get out," she commanded. They tore back to the stairs, dread mixing with adrenaline, each step echoing the thundering chaos below. But when they reached the ground floor, the doorway was eerily quiet. The air felt thick, charged with something they couldn't see. Suddenly, shouting erupted outside, voices crying for help. Her stomach twisted. The monster was just the beginning. What if there were others? "Leah, we can't just stand here." She froze. That voice, it was familiar, amidst the pandemonium. "Jason." "Leah, listen." He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look him in the eyes. "Whatever happens, next we stick together." "Okay," she managed, but her heart raced wildly. Outside, chaos loomed, a storm far more ruthless than they had imagined. It called to them, and in that moment they knew they couldn't turn back. They pushed through the door into the abyss, ready to uncover the sinister truth waiting just beyond the dawn. But as they stepped into the uncertain shadows, a question lingered: what was truly lurking beneath the surface? The moment they stepped outside, the world erupted into a cacophony of cries and chaos. Leah's senses overloaded as she registered the screams mingling with the roar of the ocean, the sharp smell of salt and fear hanging heavy in the air. Jason's hand gripped hers tightly as they faced the tumultuous scene. Waves clawed at the shore like desperate hands, rising higher, crashing harder. She squinted into the dark, searching for familiar faces among the panicked crowd. A flicker caught her eye, and she turned just in time to see a dazed figure stagger, nearly swept away by a rushing wave. It was a woman, and Leah's heart lurched. "Help!" Jason shouted, breaking through the noise. "We have to get her." "No," Leah replied, urgency shredding her words. "It's too dangerous." But his determination sent adrenaline surging within her, igniting feelings she couldn't ignore. He pulled away from her grasp, running toward the struggling woman, their eyes fixed momentarily in silent acknowledgement. Leah's pulse quickened as she followed closely behind, fear skittering through her veins. Heart racing, she shifted her focus back to the waves, now crested with foamy white fangs, crashing like a beast unleashed. "Grab her!" Jason shouted, reaching for the woman. Leah looked on, gasping as the water surged again, threatening to consume them all. She felt helpless, caught between fear and the fierce urge to protect him. If only they could find a way to save the people around them, to stop this horror before it swallowed them whole. Leah's brain buzzed with frantic thoughts. They needed a plan, a lifeline amidst the storm. But as the water withdrew, it revealed something that made her heart plummet. A dark shape maneuvered beneath the surface, circling them. "Jason!" she yelled, panic spilling over, and he turned just as the wave pushed back, dragging him and the woman perilously close to the water's edge. With a burst of instinct, Leah lunged forward, grasping the edge of Jason's collar, her body straining to hold on as the rip pulled them down. "I'm here!" he shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the terrifying roar of the ocean. Her grip tightened, their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat time stood still. "Back! Back!" a voice thundered suddenly, cutting through the chaos. It was the same stranger they'd seen earlier, rushing towards them with a wild look in his eyes. He lunged forward, tackling Jason to the ground, just as another wave surged. "Get out of the water!" he shouted, dragging Jason and the woman away, but Leah was rooted in place, unable to break away from the sight of the beast lurking just beyond the shoreline. She hesitated, torn between leaving her brother and confronting the unknown, but as another wave crashed down, she realized there was no choice. She had to trust him. In a flurry, they scrambled back toward the building, its once stalwart structure now consumed by shadows and uncertainty. The stranger pointed toward an alley, urging them to follow him. "They're regrouping," he shouted over the sound of angry waves. "We need to find shelter." Leah's pulse raced. What did he mean by they? Who else was out there? The thought pricked at the edge of her mind. She felt the weight of dread settle in her stomach as Jason followed suit, darting behind the stranger. "We can't stay out here," Jason urged, glancing nervously toward the crashing waves. "Just trust me," the stranger replied, urgency fueling his conviction. Leah gritted her teeth, dread blooming as they plunged deeper into the darkness. With each step, whispers of danger curled around her thoughts. Were there truly other threats lurking, hidden beneath the surface, waiting for their moment to strike? And just like that, the storm's howling winds faded into silence, an eerie calm that wrapped around them. What was happening? Jason trembled, glancing back at the shore, and the tension in the air intensified. "We're not alone," the stranger whispered, eyes darting towards the dim light of a nearby building. Leah couldn't shake the foreboding feeling wrapping around her heart. Behind them, the water churned, ominously as if anticipating their next move. And deep inside her soul, a chilling question arose: what darkness lay ahead, and would they be ready to face it? They darted into the narrow alley, the cold air wrapping around them like a shroud. Shadows leapt and danced as they sought refuge, their breath coming in sharp gasps. Leah's heart pounded in her chest, every thud echoed the mounting dread that coursed through her veins. Jason was right behind her, his face a mask of confusion, questions brimming in his wide eyes. The stranger led them further down the alley, glancing back over his shoulder, urgency etched into his features. "We have to keep moving," he urged, his voice low but forceful. "They'll track us if we don't get to safety." "Who's they?" Leah blurted out, her voice trembling as she struggled to catch her breath. The alley walls closed in around them, separating them from the chaos outside, but the sense of panic clung like a wet blanket. "Not now," he snapped, pushing them forward. "Can't you feel the ground shaking? We've got to get to the basement." Leah stopped momentarily, her instincts flaring. "What do you mean? What is happening?" "Just trust me," His eyes bore into hers, pleading for understanding. They were at a heavy wooden door, half hidden by rotting crates. He slammed his palm against the surface, and the door creaked open, revealing a dark passageway that spiraled down into the abyss. And a heartbeat. They were shuffling inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. The faint flicker of a light bulb sputtered above, casting ominous shadows on the damp walls. Jason squeezed her hand tightly, the only reassurance in this world gone mad. "What is this place?" Leah whispered, her voice barely above a murmur as they stepped cautiously. The air was thick with mold and dust, the kind of silence that hummed with anticipation and terror. "It's a safe house," the stranger replied, his urgency easy to sense. "But it's not foolproof. They'll come. Just stay close to me and don't make a sound." Types of fear twisted inside her as the possibilities began to form, the lingering thought of the creature lurking in the ocean far from her mind. It was clear. This was just a new chapter in whatever nightmare they had stumbled into. But the darkness here held its own dangers. Sudden pounding echoed above, shaking dust from the rafters. Leah's breath hitched as the stranger pressed a finger to his lips, signaling them to remain silent, a warning that hung heavy in the air. Jason's grip tightened as cold shivers typically associated with fear flooded Leah's spine. "What is that?" Jason trembled, his eyes darting wildly around the scant light. "Just stay calm," the stranger whispered, his voice steady and low, masking his own terror. But the tremor in his words betrayed him. Then, a voice rose from above them. It was guttural and menacing, breaking the silence with an edge of brutality. "They went this way. Search everywhere." Leah sank further into the shadows, her heart racing, pounding out a frantic rhythm against her ribcage. Would they be captured? What would happen if they found them? The very thought sent a jolt of ice through her veins. The stranger's breath quickened as he motioned for them to follow him deeper into the belly of the building. They navigated through tight corridors, a maze of old furniture and scattered debris. "What do you know about what's happening out there?" Leah pressed, her voice strained but holding on to the last thread of hope that understanding would bring security. But the stranger simply shook his head, eyes wrapped tightly in fear, offering no answers. "More than you realize," he admitted, his voice a whisper edged in dread. Suddenly a loud crash reverberated through the building. Creaking wood, shouts and chaos erupted above them as shadows flitted past the light streaming from the staircase. "Run!" he barked, sprinting down another passage, leaving Leah and Jason no choice but to follow. They raced through the twisting dark, breathless, marked only by the sound of their footsteps and heartbeats thrumming in their ears. But behind them the echo of pursuit grew louder, drawing nearer, an impending storm closing in. What else awaited them in the shadows? Leah dared not look back, her mind racing to piece together her swirling thoughts. All she knew was they had to escape. With every twist and turn they took, the questions loomed larger. Who were the pursuers and what did they want? As another crash resounded, lights flickering in response, Leah felt the creeping touch of despair. Could they truly survive this night? She looked to Jason, a glimmer of resolve igniting between them, a flicker of hope against a blanket of darkness. But just when Leah thought they found a way out, she stumbled onto a sudden drop, and a chasm opened up before them. What lay beneath that abyss? The unknown was now the most insidious of nightmares. Leah barely caught herself, teetering on the brink of the abyss as her heart threatened to leap from her chest. She squeezed Jason's hand tighter, her mind racing with one terrible thought after another. What lay below? Was it a dark pit? Or something worse? "I can't see anything," she gasped, panic clutching her throat. They were cornered. The sounds of chaos were still surging behind them, drawing closer. The stranger pushed them forward with urgency in his eyes. "Step back," he hissed, scanning the walls for a way out. "There must be another way." Jason peered over the ledge, trying to see what lay below. "Is it safe?" he called back, his voice vibrating with fear. "Does it matter?" Leah shot back, her anxiety boiling over. "We don't have a choice." In that moment they heard it, a low growl, echoing up from the shadows below. A chill slithered down Leah's spine. "We have to go." Without thinking, she grabbed Jason and stepped back from the edge. The stranger scanned the cramped space. "This way, there's a door." He dashed towards a nearby door that looked like it was about to fall off its hinges. The pounding above intensified, an ominous reminder that time was running short. They rushed over, the stranger yanking it open just as the noise crescendoed above them. Inside, the room was dim and cluttered with forgotten relics of a different era. Old crates, broken furniture, and rusty tools littered the floor. It felt suffocating, as if the air had been trapped in here for years. "Close the door," the stranger urged as he pushed them in. The door slammed shut behind them with a finality that resonated painfully in Lia's chest. "What now?" Jason asked, his voice small, fear making his eyes glisten. "What if they find us?" "Shoo." The stranger pressed a finger to his lips again, listening intently. The growls still echoed outside but were fading now, chasing a ghost. "We wait," he whispered. "We can't make a sound. They might pass us by." Lia's mind was racing. "You still haven't told us who they are. Why are we even here?" "They're hunters," he replied, staring at the sealed door as if it could offer some protection. "They've been after me for a long time, and now you two are involved. But we can't talk here." Jason's brow furrowed, stepping forward. "What do you mean we're involved? We didn't sign up for this." The stranger let out a distressed sigh, his face lined with worry and determination. "You don't have to understand. You just need to survive, trust me." Before Jason could reply, the door shuddered violently, a round of intense bangs echoing through the room. Lia felt the walls close in on her as her heart sunk. "Get down," the stranger shouted, dropping to the floor, pulling them down with him. The door splintered under the pressure. "We're not safe," Lia whimpered, instinct screaming to escape again. "Stay low," he ordered, pushing her against the dusty floor, trying to muffle her fear. Sounds flooded in: shouts, footsteps, and then a sudden silence that sent a wave of dread crashing over them. Lia's breath hitched. The predator was now in control. Moments stretched into eternity. Then a low hiss emerged. They must be here somewhere. Lia could feel the weight of the panic pressing down on her. She could see the stranger's eyes darting back and forth, filled with a fear that mirrored her own. What were they hunting? What would happen if they found them? The tension in the air was electric, suffocating the space. In the quiet, a sense of impending doom tightened around them. Just as she thought they were utterly trapped, the heavy breathing of a figure approached. All that separated them from the nightmare was a flimsy door, one that felt like a promise of betrayal. Then the voice rang clear above them like thunder. "Check under the floorboards." Their fate rested on a knife's edge. Would they be found, or could they still escape? Time was running out, and the hunter's scent was in the air. What would happen next? The answer was lurking just beyond the edge of the door. Lia's heart hammered in her chest, the sound deafening in the suffocating silence that enveloped them. She pressed her cheek to the cold, dusty floor, wishing desperately for the ground to swallow her whole. The stranger beside her was tense, muscles coiled like springs, ready to snap back into action at any moment. "What do we do?" Jason whispered, his voice barely a tremor. There was a pleading look in his eyes. "Wait," the stranger muttered, his own breath shallow as the figure outside shuffled closer. Every second stretched like an eternity. Lia's pulse raced as the footsteps reverberated above them, boots stomping through the abandoned room, searching. Her chest tightened painfully as if a weight were pressing down. Then the voice came again, sharper this time. "They're in here. I can smell them." Lia's eyes widened. The hunter was close enough for her to imagine him kneeling down, peering through the narrow gap at the bottom of the door. "We can't just lie here," she hissed, her anxiety bubbling over. "They'll find us." "Stay quiet or we're dead," the stranger growled, his eyes flickering toward the door like it was a predator, all teeth and claws. The unyielding silence returned, suffocating and heavy. The breathing from the outside softened almost to a whisper, and Lia strained to hear any sign of movement. Was he leaving? Or just waiting patiently like a snake poised to strike? Suddenly there was a loud crash, a wrenching sound like metal twisting against metal. Lia's heart leaped. The hunter was breaking the door down. The stranger gripped Lia's shoulder, his eyes wild. "We have to make a run for it." "What?" Jason exclaimed, barely keeping his voice down. Before they could protest, the stranger surged forward, flinging the door open. Surprising no one more than himself, the room outside was empty, save for the scattered debris and darkness that swallowed it whole. "Move!" he barked, and with adrenaline pumping through her veins, Lia followed him out onto the floor, Jason right behind her. They darted ahead, Bursting out into the rubble-strewn hallway, it felt like stepping into a horror movie. "Where do we go?" Jason asked, his voice tinged with panic. "Follow me," the stranger commanded, moving swiftly down the hallway, his movements calculated. They journeyed further into the darkness, a world of shadows and faint echoes. Just behind them, soft scrambling noises grated on Lia's nerves. They were still being hunted. A rustling sound erupted, and from around the corner, a figure loomed, silhouetted against a faint light. Lia froze, heart in her throat. "Back!" the stranger yelled. Without hesitation, he pushed them back toward a nearby doorway, slamming it shut just as the figure lunged forward, the door rattling under the impact. "We can't remain here," they break through. Lia fought her rising desperation. "Why won't you tell us what's going on? Why are we involved?" He hesitated just long enough to send a tremor of doubt through Lia, a flash of fear she hadn't seen before. "You saw something, didn't you? Something you weren't supposed to. What are you talking about?" Jason pressed, his eyes darting around the cramped room. Another crash against the door propelled Lia's anxiety into overdrive. "This isn't the time. They're coming." The stranger's eyes darkened, and he leaned in close. "If they catch us, we're out of options. You need to trust me to get you out of here. And then we'll talk." But the urgency in his tone contrasted starkly with the sudden calm that descended as the footsteps faded momentarily. Just when hope began to flicker, another low growl filled the air, faint but unrelenting, rising and falling like a predator toying with its prey. Liara's stomach twisted in knots as the figure at the door started to press again. With each rattle, she felt as if time itself was bearing down on her, squeezing the breath from her lungs. And then she heard it, the sound of the door creaking slowly, just a split second before they heard the low voice once again. Time's up. What lay on the other side would determine everything. Would they face their doom, or was there a way out? The hunter's patience was wearing thin, and they had to act fast. As the door buckled under pressure, a moment hung in the air, thick with fear, and Lia's heart raced wildly. The stranger's fleeting glance told her everything. Time was running out. He turned abruptly, urgency painting his features. "There's no time for questions. We run on my signal." "What about the others?" Jason asked, panic-stricken. "They'll find their own way. We must go now." The stranger ripped open the door, revealing the dim corridor beyond. Shadows danced in the flickering light, teasing a night filled with danger. Lia and Jason plunged into the corridor. The air swirled with tension. Behind them, the reverberations of the hunter's footsteps grew louder, relentless as they advanced. The stranger led the charge, windmill-like, guiding them through the maze-like structure. Instinctively, they clung to each other, forging a fragile bond amid the chaos. They turned desperately through the darkened halls, hearts thrumming in unison. The stranger glanced behind, a flicker of fear twisting his lips. "Keep going," he urged, pushing them onward. They could hear the soft thrum of voices, the heavy footsteps echoing behind them like a menacing drum. Suddenly, they skidded to a halt. The stranger pulled them into a small alcove, drawing them close. "We need to hide," he whispered, shadows swallowing his words. The overhead lights flickered erratically. Huddled together, tension coiled tighter around Lia. But she didn't dare speak. The weight of survival pressed against her chest. The footsteps approached, the menacing voice of the hunter echoing through the hallway. "They have to be close," it said, dripping with intensity, making Lia's skin crawl. "I can smell them." Every breath felt like a quiet scream, the adrenaline coursing through her veins, suffocating but electrifying. Would they find them? Everyone's lives were moments away from being unraveled. Suddenly, a commotion echoed down the hall as someone barged in from the other side. "Search the building," a voice bellowed, controlling the chaos with a force that commanded attention. Lia's stomach churned at the thought. They were cornered, trapped. The universe was drawing tighter around them. Then, without warning, the stranger turned his sharp gaze on them, his breath steadying. "We need to take a chance. No turning back." Lia's heart sank, fear wrapping around her thoughts like a vice. "What do you mean?" "No time." The urgency snapped back. "Follow me carefully, stay close." He inched toward the corner, scanning for movement. The door creaked just a few steps away, and without another word, they edged towards it, their movements synchronized in a silent dance of fate. The stranger pushed the door open slowly, revealing a stairwell that plummeted down into a darkness that smelled like must and mildew. "This way," he whispered, and they slid into the shadows. Each step punctuated by echoing heartbeats, they made their way down. "I can't keep running," Jason breathed, panting heavily. "You need to," the stranger replied. "We're almost there." The tension in the air thickened as they reached the bottom of the stairs. A dark cavern stretched before them. A single dim light flickered, revealing scattered crates and dust-covered relics from a forgotten world. "Here." The stranger guided them behind a stack of old crates, the chaos outside rising into a distant hum. They leaned against the cool wood, eyes wide with expectation. "What's your name?" Leah finally asked, her voice trembling. "Eli," he replied, urgency in his eyes. "And you two are deeply entangled in something you don't yet understand. The truth runs deep, but we have to stay alive first." "What truth?" Jason asked. "What is happening out there? Your lives are in danger because of what you've seen. They're everywhere, the hunters. They're not just after me, they're after the pieces you inadvertently hold." "The pieces?" Leah felt a tightness in her chest. "Like my passport?" "Yes. That photo, it's a key." Eli spat, frustration woven into his tone. "The symbols you saw represent more than you know." "What do you mean?" Jason shifted, his brow furrowed. "We have to get." Eli stopped short, head cracking back towards the stairway. The unmistakable sound of footsteps descending echoed closer. A threat of panic flared in Leah's heart. "Get ready," Eli commanded, drawing them close. "When I say we dash back out." Their way through the alley past the first room. "I don't know if I can," Leah stammered. Her knees felt weak beneath her. "Remember," Eli whispered fiercely, "trust me. We have to fight together." The footsteps grew louder until silhouetted shadows loomed against the flickering light. The tension escalated, the ground beneath them heaved as if emboldened by fear. Another creak of the stairs, further confirming their imminent confrontation. But the moment of reckoning belonged to them now. This challenge would define who rose from the ashes of chaos. The hidden truths would shatter the silence. And they had the strength to face this darkness together. "Now!" Eli shouted suddenly. They burst from the crates, sprinting toward the back stairwell, heartbeats pounding in synchronicity. "Hold on tight." They dashed down the dim corridor, racing through the abandoned building, panic driving them forward. The door ahead beckoned like a lifeline, the tumultuous wind swirling outside a foretelling omen of the storm. The world surged around them, each step reverberating in the rising dread. "Do you see it?" Jason shouted, fear flashing in his eyes. The sheer momentum propelled them, frenzied but focused on that one goal, a glimpse of freedom. Eli dashed toward the door, flinging it open to reveal the tumult outside, the unrelenting waves rising like a monstrous wall ahead. With the pounding ocean and the hunters behind them, they faced their truth, united in desperation, entwined by fate. Together they would reclaim their story from the shadows, fueled by hope and raw determination against whatever lurked in the darkness. As dawn approached, the sun's first light threaded through the clouds, illuminating their determined faces and promising an end to a night filled with chaos. Together they would forge a path through fear and take steps toward reclaiming their future. Now, as you've journeyed through this story with Leah and Jason, don't forget this isn't just the end. It's the beginning of something new. You need to subscribe now for more heart-pounding stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and help others find this journey. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what happens next. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this thrilling conclusion. Let us keep this adventure alive together.